Hello, my name is Lizzie, and today I'm going to share a little bit about a double-edged sword and how it affects our BMW. So, by definition, a double-edged sword is a situation or an action or something having both a positive and a negative effect. Okay, and then full disclosure, I am not a psychologist, biologist, welder, none of that. I'm literally a person that has um, things that affect my heart, my mind, and my wallet. And I want to share that. And that's basically the concept behind Hub of the Heart. So anything that affects our BMW, which is body, mind, and wallet, I like to come on here and just share a little bit about that. Let me just get a little situated right here. Go up a little bit. Okay. All right. Okay. So, just some double-edged swords that I have found in kind of today's society are just the way that we eat. So, if you're trying to eat healthy, you may be like eating things that are really gross or trying to make it to where you're on a diet. So, a diet is a horrible way to live. I know that people call instead of saying like, oh, this is a diet, it's a lifestyle, but it really is. So if you know that this thing that has been ruining your health, and you decide to take it out, but you're telling yourself temporarily, like, oh, I'm just going to take it out temporarily, and then I'll be able to bring it back. You're never going to win. So that is a diet versus a lifestyle is saying, okay, this thing that's hurting me, it's harming me. It is a double-edged sword because it brings me a lot of joy for like a small period of time, which is like the high that you get when you're eating like, cookies or donuts or whatever. But it has a longer lasting effect on the negative side. So that's a double-edged sword. So a lot of things like, it's like, for example, fish. Okay. So I know a lot of people are like, fish is so healthy. It's so amazing. Your doctor, if you go to your doctor and you're like, doc, what's wrong with me? And he doesn't, or they don't recommend you going to a nutritionist, or even a therapist, then you should probably get another doctor. But you know what? You can't go to your doctor and ask them to teach you about health. They don't study health. They study medicine. They study how to prescribe something for the side effect. They don't know how to cure that side effect. They don't know how, they might know how it happened, but they don't study that. So I don't really put a lot of um, shame on the doctor. I used to, until I realized that like it would be like me going to a mechanic and asking a mechanic to unplug my to fix the plumbing at my house. So they don't actually study that. So why am I getting mad at this mechanic for not being able to know why my plumbing is backed up, right? So it's the same concept. So if you have health issues like heart disease or diabetes or anything like that, and you go to the doctor and the doctor's like, well, this is what you should do and this and that, don't be mad at him if nothing else comes from it other than a prescription. That's what they study. They study medicine. Okay. So, like, say, take fish, for example. He'll probably be like, or they'll probably be like, um, instead of ground beef or cow, try to eat some fish. Why? Because it's a healthier alternative. When in reality, fish is full of heavy metals. They are full of toxins from the sea that we pollute. So if we're feeding our family fish, then we're actually feeding them everything that's in the ocean. So it's not a great alternative, but we eat fish for what? For the omegas, for the fish oil, right? Okay. So where does that fish actually get the nutrients from? Algae. The same thing that when we need our nutrients, we go to an animal because that animal is eating that grass or that nutrient in the field. We're eating that thing because we need that plant, right? So why wouldn't we just take that toxin, that animal out and say, you know what, I'm just going to go straight to the source. I'm going to just take algae, right? And the reason why you want to get those omegas and get that, so omegas have DHA and EPA. So those are really good for our nervous system. It's good for our brain. It's good for babies, like they're like, oh, the DHA, like super big on DHA when you're pregnant, right? But we need DHA in general. But like when you're pregnant, everyone's like, oh, don't eat fish and don't eat sushi and take more DHA for the baby, for the baby, for the baby, for the baby. But what about us as like mothers or like just women or people? Why wouldn't we just take care of ourselves the same way when we're not pregnant? Okay, so like we're so concerned about pregnant people eating fish when they're pregnant, but like not concerned about people eating it in general. Okay, so that was just kind of like a double-edged sword for me. And that's the biggest one that I'm going to focus on just for body. So eating fish. Okay, so the thing that I found, which was really awesome, because we're primarily plant-based, so I'm not going to sit there and get my my omegas from fish, and we haven't done that in years. We've gotten it from seeds, so flaxseed, hemp seed, chia seed, all of that has omega, and nuts. So we're getting it from food, but you can also supplement. You always want to supplement a little bit more, just because the food that we're eating right now isn't as rich and dense in nutrients as it was before. Okay, so you have to eat a lot more or a little bit more to get the same effect that we got 100 years ago, if that makes sense. So body wise, a double-edged sword would be eating fish. Okay, so great omegas, great fish oil, heavy metals, toxins, pollution, bottom feeders, eating their poop, literally eating their poop. So that's a double-edged sword. Or you can use something that's more sustainable. So I take this supplement, which is awesome. It's called Green Omegas, because it's literally coming from algae. So it's coming from what the fish are actually eating while we're eating the fish. Okay, it's just taking out the middleman. Like, you don't need to eat the fish. There are great things about fish, right? But there's also a negative side that you don't want that fish in your body. Okay. So that was the body part. Okay. Another thing for mind. Okay. So a double-edged sword that I've kind of noticed, recently, is, it's kind of like a huge epidemic, and I didn't realize it was until I was like, oh my goodness, it's a huge epidemic. Okay, so anything that brings you satisfaction, short satisfaction, or just a cheap thrill, and then after you have shame and guilt, and you feel like you're like dirty and isolated, is like, say, like binge eating, right? Binge watching TV. Like, how horrible do you feel when you're sitting there watching TV and you're like, next episode, next episode, and next episode, and it's Saturday and you've been waiting this whole week for Saturday, right? You're like, I'm going to do so much on Saturday. It's going to be out of this world. But you literally, because you have so much to do, you have like, you have paralysis. You're like, I have so much to do, but I'm so overwhelmed. So I'm just not going to do anything. I'm going to sit on my phone. I'm going to scroll, and I'm just not going to do anything. Okay. And that's where a lot of, it's a big deal, and it's kind of taboo to even talk about it, which is porn. I mean, to be honest with you, you think that it's not harming you or harming your family because it's like, oh, this is like a guilty pleasure that I have. I'm going to watch porn, but it's like, that's hurting your mind, right? For that 15 minutes of whatever went on, you are like, this is a guilty pleasure for me, but it's like, I'm putting so much harm into my body and my family, but it's a guilty pleasure. It's my little thing. And what the enemy wants you to do with that, actually, it's pretty crazy, is he wants to isolate you. So whenever you feel like you want to be isolated because of something like shameful that you did, it's really coming from the enemy. Because I think we know that whatever is true, whatever is good, and whatever is love comes from God. So whatever is not any of those things is going to come from the enemy. So that is the biggest thing that people, and you can argue all day, it's not hurting anyone. It's my guilty pleasure. I am not, it's my thing, but it has some like very long lasting effects. Okay. And it ruins families. It really does. It ruins the way that we perceive what love is, how we love, and who we love. So you're in these images in your brain, they just spin over and over and over and over again. And when you're doing, when you're in that time with your spouse, you're not thinking about your actual spouse. You're thinking about that person that you were looking at that was such a guilty pleasure that isn't hurting anyone. Okay, so that was kind of a big deal, and I know it, like I said, it's very taboo, but it does need to be talked about. And then the last thing that is a double-edged sword is obviously anything that gives you, that's free. Like sometimes food is free because we have it in a refrigerator or whatever. We don't have to go out and buy it. And then our phone, that's free entertainment, right? But when something actually costs you money and it's hurting you on the same side, that is a double-edged sword. So you're like, this is awesome. I really love this. But then you wake up like almost the same thing as like drinking. You're like, oh, I love alcohol. I love drinking. It's so much fun. It makes me feel like I'm so like incredible, and I have such a good personality. I have courage to do anything. But then the effect of it the next day is like texting and saying, I'm sorry for how I acted last night. I was totally like out of line, or you don't remember. And then you have a hangover. And there's like that whole part of it. So yeah. So that was still on, that's almost like the mind and body. And then the wallet side is anything that causes you like that little satisfaction initially, but then you have to pay for it financially later. That's a double-edged sword. So if we just kind of filter everything through like, okay, is this positive for my life? And does it have a positive effect, right? Am I having fun doing it? And is it helping me, right? So if you eat well, you feel good, and you actually don't have to pay more in health insurance. And if you just filter it through that, but any double-edged sword, you're going to be like, you're literally going to be screwed. And it was so funny because I was like, I asked Ryan right before I jumped on, I was like, Ryan, do you have a double-edged sword in your toolbox? And he's like, why would I have a double-edged sword in my toolbox? And I was like, well, I mean, what would you use it for? He was like, nobody would use a double-edged sword. That would be stupid because you would be fixing something and you would be stabbing yourself. And I'm like, right. Right. So just think about, I always say, just think about how it affects your body, mind, and your wallet. And that's what I filter it through everything that I do. So is this food bringing me illness or wellness? Is this habit bringing me illness or wellness? Is this financial thing going to bring me wealth or broke? Like, think about that. But that's all I have. And if you do want to so these omegas are super cool because now I actually have like an omega, fish oil that it's not a fish oil, but it's an omega green algae. So this is on my website. So if you go to Hub of the Heart and then you go right onto the right side, click on non-toxic products. It is right in there, and it is amazing because, like I said, it has the omega fatty acids, EPA and DHA, and then it also has clove essential oil because clove essential oil is amazing, especially when you're trying to like mask that like really pungent fish. Because it's not fish, but algae is like, that's why they smell, that's why they smell like fish, because of algae. But it's really not bad. You can actually chew these. So that was the best part because I've taken fish oil and it's disgusting, to be honest with you. And when you burp it up, you're like, oh yeah, that's my fish oil from like earlier today. But that's all I have. You guys have the best day ever. And we'll see you next week. Bye.